Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about the film The Evil Dead. Now, this video will be starting off a series of reviews that I'm doing of the Evil Dead films. The Evil Dead is about a group of friends, 5 friends specifically, from Michigan State University, decide to spend their spring break in an isolated cabin in the woods that they've never seen before and know nothing about. They go to this cabin and soon discover the Necronomicon, and a recording that summons demons that slowly possesses all of them and causes many bloody and gory results. The Evil Dead was Sam Raimi's rite of passage. It was his first feature film, and it was incredibly ambitious. This film was shot in like late '79, early 1980, and this was the time of Halloween. This was the time of low-budget slasher films. If you were a normal low-budget filmmaker at this time, you got your friend, you put a scary mask on them, you gave them a butcher knife, and you did some cool angles, and it worked out and you made some money. Sam Raimi wasn't like any of those guys because he made probably one of the most ambitious low-budget films I've ever seen, and probably will ever exist. Because if you're going to do supernatural horror, that's a big budget thing. That is not Halloween territory right there. That didn't even cross his mind, you know, which is probably why he made one of the most expensive Hollywood movies ever later, but that's beside the point. He was incredibly ambitious. Every time I watch this, I always think like how well directed it is and how he made the most of a lot of these shots. They didn't have the sufficient camera rigs that he needed. They made their own camera rigs, and the camera moves in such crazy ways that I don't think if he had a regular rig it would have such a cool feel to it. It's incredibly gory. When I was a kid and I used to watch the Evil Dead films, I'd always be afraid somebody's mom or my mom or wherever we were watching it would walk in and like take the tape away and like throw it in the trash and burn it. I watched several like splatter and gore films that they didn't really know anything about, so he got away with. And with tree rape and all the gore and the blood and the disgustingness. This was one of the original video nasties. It was one of the most notorious video nasties. It was one of Edgar Wright's favorite video nasties. There is kind of a salacious, X-rated kind of hidden quality about it that it still holds up really well. You know, you watch a lot of those slasher films and I think the intensity is still there. I think the scares are still there. But in this, you have the intensity and the scares, but you also have that forbidden quality, because films rarely go as far as all the Evil Dead films, but this really sets the precedent with the first The Evil Dead. It pushes it so far. Certainly every time I watch it I always think like movies can still do that, like movies can go that far. Isn't this the conservative 80s? Haven't things calmed down a little bit? But no, this film really goes there, really goes to the nth degree. It really shows the gore and the violence and the sex. It's disturbing and crazy and creepy and awesome all at the same time. You can tell kind of the Sam Raimi wit is in there. It's a lot more subdued than it is later. I feel like later he's a lot more crazed, but right now he doesn't have, I think, the confidence as a director he has later. He considered this to be kind of his rite of passage. This was his first time at the bat, so I don't think he was pulling out as many tricks or even probably knew how to do all those tricks. His kind of humor is there, his dark kind of cartoony Tex Avery type humor that would come out later in like Evil Dead 2 and his next film Crime Wave, but not as much in this. It's always weird to see Bruce Campbell at the beginning because he almost doesn't look like Bruce Campbell, like he has a little too much baby fat on him or something. Not that I should really be talking, but he looks so different. Like his chin doesn't look as pronounced, he looks a little chubbier. It's like a little weird, like that's not Bruce Campbell. And he's not really, Ash isn't the main character at first. I think Scotty kind of is a lot more dominant than Ash at the beginning, and then Ash slowly becomes the main character. Mostly because Bruce Campbell and Sam Raimi were childhood friends and lifelong friends at this point, and Bruce Campbell was willing to do all this stuff that a lot of the actors weren't, and was willing to keep shooting and keep coming back for reshoots, so that's why Bruce Campbell's in most of it. But also Bruce Campbell and Sam Raimi make an incredible team, as we all know now. It's always weird for me to watch The Evil Dead because I was introduced to Sam Raimi and the Evil Dead films with Evil Dead 2, and I've always preferred Evil Dead 2. I think most people feel Evil Dead 2 is the better film, and it's a more wild and crazy and insane film. And then when you look at The Evil Dead, which is, you know, it's his first film, he doesn't have the experience that Sam Raimi 7 years later would have. It's always weird for me because I know this is the first film but it almost has the problem most sequels have with it, is that most sequels have the problem that the first film exists, thus making the sequel not as good because it has to be compared to a really good first film and they're just not as good. And I feel like The Evil Dead has the opposite problem where it has to be compared to Evil Dead 2, for at least me. And I know a lot of people who saw Evil Dead 2 first, they didn't see The Evil Dead first. I don't have as much of an attachment, but it's still such a cool, awesome, scary horror movie. I'm always surprised how more scary this is. Evil Dead 2 is still scary and funny, but I guess this is a little more scary than funny. It's still kind of funny, it still has that Sam Raimi wit, but it isn't really the same as Evil Dead 2. I think he understood like the problems with the story and how he got rid of people like Scotty and changed the story a lot. And I think he made it a lot better of a film with Evil Dead 2. But I still really like this film, and if you compare it to the time in horror, it's like so much better than a bunch of Halloween ripoffs. You know, it's so much smarter than what everyone else was doing, and it's so creative. You know, that's one of the things I think when I think of Sam Raimi is like how incredibly creative he was as a young filmmaker to come up with all this stuff and have like, I mean, even at the end when the bodies are like falling apart in that like slow motion sequence, most people would not do that. You know, they would have it be a lot more economical, and it's like it felt like Sam Raimi didn't care, even though apparently when they shot it they had horrible conditions. He like kept going. That attitude is so infused in this film, it makes you want to follow it. And as I watch The Evil Dead, I always get more and more invested in it. And at the end, when you have Ash by himself, it's like I'm so into it. You know, at the beginning, it's always hard for me to get into this film, especially because I'm like, oh, well, this isn't Evil Dead to me. This isn't Evil Dead 2. But it's funny, you know, this was first, and I know that's kind of perception and what order you watch movies, but I think that has always like kind of ruined my opinion of The Evil Dead is Evil Dead 2, unfortunately. But I still think this is a hell of a horror movie and a hell of a fucking movie and quite an experience of a horror movie, and I love watching it with friends. In a lot of places it was released simultaneously in theaters and on video because they were afraid it was going to get banned quickly, so they still wanted to milk the promotion they had going on. So it's funny, it was kind of like ahead of its time because now you have theater and, you know, video or on demand as we call it now. Even now, if someone made something like this, I think you'd be pretty awestruck from it, and that's still that feeling still hits me with The Evil Dead. It is kind of the most straight horror film of all of them, so that's probably why it feels so off-putting, because it's like so kind of almost unlike them, but I still really enjoy it. So if you have seen The Evil Dead and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments, and subscribe if you would like to. I wanted to announce at the end of this video when Evil Dead 2 video will come out. I don't actually know because things are a little erratic in my life right now. I'm going through a bit of a transition. I will tell you more about that in an info video, and things will kind of settle down and videos will come out on a more regular schedule. But Evil Dead 2 will probably come out semi-soon, but I do not know exactly when, so I apologize for that, but it will come out shortly, and that's it.